Okay, next thing we're going to sort of deal with is another editor similar to the key editor is called the drum editor. Okay, so what I've done, I've brought in an instrument track and I've brought in this particular instrument here, which is the Groove Agent plugin, which is essentially a drum machine. All right, and I've brought in, if you just click in the browser again, all these sort of plugins work in a similar way that you can sort of choose a patch from that little window at the top, and there are lots of different types of kit, because as we know, each kind of genre of music has an associated set of drum sounds. So in here you'll sort of see there's a Collins kit. I assume that's referring to Phil Collins. D&B, which I don't think stands for Dandelion and Burdock. I think that's drum and bass. Disco house, electro kit, funky house, sort of percussion, hard rock. So there's lots of different types of kit. I'm just going to go with something at random. Let's go for Big Beat. So I just double click on that particular patch, and you can see that Big Beat has now been loaded up into this instrument. And we've got sort of a set of 16 pads, all right, here, that if you click on each of them, all right, you can hear the drum sounds which are associated with each pad. Okay, we don't need to see this because we're going to use an editor to program the drum kit. So what I want to do, rather than sort of play things, I can trigger things with the keyboard as I'm doing there. But what I want to do is sort of program the beat from scratch using an editor. Okay, and the way I do that is that if I double click in between my left and right locator markers, okay, and it brings up a part there, so a blank part, there's nothing in there at all. If I double click again, it will bring up the key editor. Okay, and you can see the key editor with the keys down the side. Now, you can program drums in the key editor, but Cubase has got a specific editor for sort of editing drums, and there are reasons why it has that, as we'll see when you look at the sort of main features of that editor. And the way that we access that by sort of one or two ways. If you go to the MIDI menu at the top, all right, there's a list of options at the top, and one of them is Open the Drum Editor, all right, and you can sort of see the drum editor from there. The way that I prefer to use is if you go over to the inspector, and in the inspector there is a little option here that says No Drum Map. All right, if you click in there and select GM Map, GM stands for General MIDI Map, and if you click on that, and then when you double click on that part, it will automatically know that you want to create a drum part on here, and it automatically sort of takes you to the drum editor. Okay, so you can see that the drum editor kind of looks the same as the key editor. It's got the spaces for inputting data in here. We've got the controller data sort of laying down here, which will fill up as we start putting notes in up here. The main difference being that instead of displaying a keyboard down the side, it actually displays a list of drum sounds. And what this drum sound list is a general MIDI list. And when MIDI was invented for to create a standard across lots of different sort of keyboards and drum machines and different sort of sound generating platforms. The people who invented MIDI decided that it would be a good idea if there was a general MIDI sort of sound set for drum kits. They kind of figured that nearly every track that's made has some sort of rhythmical element to it. So creating a sort of general MIDI patch where, if you see down here, we've got a list of each individual sort of drum sound and the key that it's on. All right, so if I click C1 there, all right, that's going to be a bass drum. C sharp one, which is the next sort of black key up, all right, is a sort of side stick. D1 is another acoustic snare. All right, you can see it sort of corresponding to these sort of sounds down here. Now, something to note with the with this list and using the Groove Agent is that not all Groove Agent drum patches are general MIDI. Okay, so particularly when you get down the list down here, when it's sort of when we're dealing with percussion and that kind of thing, you know, you might find that if you click on this space here, all right, which allows you, if we just go down the bass drum, you see if I click there, it will actually play the sound that's associated with that particular drum sound. As we get down here, all right, there might be some which don't correspond, all right, and some sounds which don't exist at all, all right. So don't be worried if you can't hear any sound. The general MIDI sound set does have all those sounds, but the Groove Agent patches doesn't necessarily have them all. It will usually have sounds sort of in this area, because the first sort of perhaps 15 sounds are associated with the common elements of a standard drum kit. And you can hear we've got all those sort of different sounds sort of happening there. So that was like a low floor tom, but it's more like an electronic kind of tom. Hi-hats, another sort of electronic-y floor sort of tom. Okay, so just be aware that the names of these drums on here perhaps might not correspond to the patch that you've got loaded up in Groove Agent. All right, but we're just going to be creating a bog standard groove, and the main sort of parts of a groove are the bass drum, the snare drum, and the hi-hat. Okay, so it immediately defaults to this little drumstick sort of icon. You can see that when I drag it into the main arrangement sort of here, you can see that I've got a little drumstick which at the moment is snapping to every sort of quarter beat, which is dictated by this sort of thing here. And we've got the quantize sort of setup. If we double click on there, if we just click to 16ths, apply quantize, and we can see now that we've sort of changed to 16ths of a beat. So in between every single sort of bar there now, I'll be able to input a particular sort of drum hit. So I'm going to start with my bass drum, and I'm going to keep it nice and simple. And I'm just going to click on every beat. Okay, and you can see the velocities have come in here, and the velocities will correspond to the insert velocity set here. So as you can see, at the moment, I've sort of got an insert velocity of 60, and that's what each one of these sort of hits will come in as. If you want to get rid of a drum hit, you just click on it again. You can see that it sort of disappears, and I can sort of just click and drag, click once and drag, and the same goes for sort of painting notes in. All right, if I've got that selected to 16th, you can see as I've painted the note and I've clicked once and dragged, it'll bring in sort of notes every 16th of a bar. Okay, so I'm just going to alter the insert velocity there. I'm going to put it back up to 100. You can see me sort of doing that there. All right, so now every time I click on the quarter notes, all right, it's inserting it at a value of 100. So if I play that back, all right, just turn it down a little bit on the main arrangement. Double click goes back to your drum editor. Okay, it's playing back a 4 on the floor type beat. All right, and as it's playing back, I can add notes as I sort of see fit. All right, I'm going to add an extra one down here. All right, I'll hear it this time. Okay, I'm going to add another one there. And I can change the velocities of these things as they're going as well. So this one here, I'm going to sort of just change the velocity down. And as you can hear this one is played slightly quieter than this one. Right, bring that one up. Right, so you can hear there's more sort of emphasis on this one here. All right, then I'm going to sort of go along and input various different sort of hits on various different instruments. So here's my snare, so I'm going to put that on the second and the fourth beat. Okay. I'm going to put some hi-hats in, closed hi-hats on the offbeat. All right, the extra hits that you can hear as the thing's playing back is me sort of just typing a note in. All right, remember that every time I click a note in, it will actually play the note or play the sound that I've sort of inputted. So don't get that confused. It'll play back normally once it sort of repeats. Okay. The good thing about the drum editor as well is that these velocities down here, the controller lane, what will display will only be, if I select the kick drum there now, you can see these velocities have changed to display these velocities associated only with the bass drum. And if I click on the snare, it's just the snare drum velocities which are displayed and the closed hi-hat. So if I want to sort of attend to any sort of individual drum instrument on its own, I can do that. The key editor doesn't actually do that. All right, so you can see I've sort of created a little bit of a velocity ramp on those end sort of hi-hats, and it'll leave these sort of notes alone. Let's hear that back. Okay. So if I add an extra snare in here now, all right, you can see that as soon as I click on that note, you know, it's selected the acoustic snare sort of lane, and it's only displaying those velocities down at the bottom. So I'm going to sort of just give myself a little bit of a less velocity on that very last sort of drum hit. Now you can keep going depending on, you know, how many sort of sounds you've got listed down here. You know, you can build up nice sort of multi-patterned rhythms. Let's just sort of get one more in here on the low tom. I'm just going to sort of just click these in here. And sometimes just doing things at random can give satisfactory results. Okay, and that's programming a rhythm on the drum editor.